Good morning and welcome to the First Unitarian Church of Orlando. Where am I? Where was I going to be? I don't know. I've been everywhere this summer. I'm Linnea Nelson, and I'm a member of the One You Worship team. And today with me in the service are the Reverends Margalie, Belizaire, the Reverend, I have them in a different order. Okay, I'm getting over COVID. I'm completely negative, but my head is not there yet. Reverend Marni Harmony, and we have Reverend Kirsten Holmblatt Allen and Reverend Kathy Schmitz. This is amazing. And also Cindy Schleier will be joining us for Joys and Concerns, and our music director, Aubrey Connolly-Candelario, with Tamara Mosny and the Chalice Choir, I believe, today. And a loving thank you to all the behind-the-scenes folks and teams that are supporting our worship service today. And I'd like to invite anyone who's sitting way on this side to move in a little bit if you can't see the ministers, because I'm sure they're going to be speaking from their seats, and I think you'll want to see them. We welcome all to join us as we explore our Unitarian Universalist faith, which draws us into a community of justice seekers with a commitment to lifelong spiritual growth and compassionate service in the community. Whoever you are, whoever you love, you are welcome here. You are welcome here regardless of your color, national origin, your mental or physical abilities, gender, sexual orientation, age, economic status, or religious background. And families, we are so happy to have you here today. When we sing This Little Light of Mine, you are invited to go out into the lobby and meet our childcare folks, to have some fun out there, and the rest of us will continue on. And as a Unitarian Universalist congregation, we are a non-creedal community, and we do not subscribe to a specific set of beliefs. We live by a covenant that encourages ethical behavior, affirms democracy, celebrates the worth of each individual, and unites us in a search for truth and meaning. We welcome you. For more information about our congregation, go to orlandouu.org or email welcometeam@orlandouu.org. And we have two special announcements today. The Friends of the New Image Youth Center are planning a community harvest festival and youth talent show from October 8th from 11 to 3. Come visit the Justice Table in Gore Hall after service to learn more about how you can participate or volunteer. Kids and teens, grab your talent spots fast because spots are limited. And last year, we began Reverend Margalie's tenure with a question box service, where all of us asked our questions of Reverend Margalie. And today is going to be another illuminating question box service, which we hope will become an annual event. So if you have a question and you didn't get a card to write it on, please raise your hand and someone from the welcome team will come by to bring it to you. And all other announcements are on the slides before and after the service and have links in the weekly update or on our website. Thanks again for being here in person or online today. Let's get started.
Please say the words with me as we light the chalice. In light of truth and in the warmth of love, we gather to seek, to sustain, and to share. Please rise in body or spirit and join in singing our opening hymn, number 361, and to rejoice and come in. The words will be projected on the screen.
saying, come in. It is so very good to be with you this morning after a wonderful summer break. I feel rested, restored, and I look forward to our new church year together and the blessings, joys, and challenges that will be brought to us, that we will face as we continue to grow together as a community. As you know, we have the question box service, so I want to leave as much room as possible for that, so I'll be brief. But I didn't want to miss the opportunity to say how wonderful it is to be up here with my colleagues. So thank you so much for saying yes. I now call us to worship with the words of Carl Seberg. Let there be joy in our coming together this morning. Let there be joy in our coming together this morning. Thank you. Let there be truth heard in the words we speak and the songs we sing. Let there be help and healing in our disharmony and despair. Let there be silence for the voice within us and beyond us. Let there be joy in our coming together. So following the questions and answer from the youth, we're hoping to have some questions from our youth. That will be what we will use today as our time for all ages. Following that, we will sing, of course, This Little Light of Mine.
Thank you. Come on down. This is kind of amazing. This is your chance to ask these wonderful women any questions that you might have. Do you have any questions? Yeah? Oh, yeah. Do you have a question?
Yes. What's your favorite football team?
Who dares to answer?
Well, it's a trick question for me, or maybe my answer is a trick answer. I don't follow football much, but I grew up in Miami, so I have to say the Miami Dolphins. Are they still around?
That's the ball that's not round, right?
I think my dad would be really upset if I didn't say the Packers. So I'm going to say the Packers. Good question.
Do you have a question?
Where's your favorite place to go on vacation?
I have one.
So it's not a place. My favorite place to be on vacation, which was what I did a lot of this summer, is being with friends. You know, I don't know if it's, especially we've been isolated I've been isolated so much from friends because of COVID and other things. So that is my favorite place to be, with friends and just spending that time together, talking, and that's been really good. So that's my favorite place to be on vacation.
And mine is going to visit my grandchildren. And my grandchildren are 4 and 8 and 10 and 14.
My place is anywhere that there's water. So if that's the beach, the water park, or a river, or my backyard with a really good sprinkler. I love to be in the water.
One question that we got was, what did you want to be when you were younger?
It's really interesting because I've been talking about this a little 4-year-old. She's really interested in dinosaurs right now, and so I was saying that when I was younger, I did have I wanted to be a paleontologist, and she is really interested in why I don't still want to be a paleontologist. I said, well, sometimes people can be interested in things and not want it to be their job. And I would say I've had a number of those. Like when I was really little, I wanted to be an elevator operator, because you always get to be the one to push the buttons in the elevator.
The first thing I remember is wanting to be a psychologist. And then I wanted to be an engineer, a computer engineer, and I did become a computer engineer before I became a minister.
Well, here is. Hello. Actually, I wanted to be right. I wanted to be a psychologist as well, and my bachelor's degree is in psychology. And then I realized, wow, it's a long time to be studying this to be a psychologist, and so, I veered off to. Social studies, social sciences, and But that was what I first wanted to be when I grew up. When I was little, I don't know. More questions?
Or an answer to that.
Oh, yeah. Do you know what you want to be when you grow up?
Nope. Well, I currently want to be an architect. I've also wanted to be a director, somebody who works at a vet, and a few other things that I can't remember. I have no clue.
Okay. No clue.
Well, the wonderful thing is that you don't have to know right now, and even if you know, it might change. All of us changed, so you can change, or you can combine things in ways you didn't even know were possible. And even when you are an adult, you can change.
Okay, well, let's sing This Little Light of Mine. The words will be on the screen. And
thank you so much for your questions.
So let's take a nice, big breath together. And on the inhale, at your own pace, but on the exhale, make a nice little whoosh sound and get all that stale air out as we prepare ourselves for a time of meditation and reflection. I think one more breath would be in order. During the first year of the pandemic, I had the great pleasure of doing a number of Zoom workshops, I guess, with an Irish family, looking at Irish history, Celtic spirituality. And one of them is a poet. And so I invite us now, we're going to think a little bit about, here we are in this sanctuary. We place ourselves here with consciousness and awareness. And outside, this is a building, but it says to people, come on in, see who we are. Inside, we are a sanctuary for our joys and our sorrows, our hopes and our dreams. Truly, for our faith, here together in this sanctuary. So now I'm going to encourage you actually to close your eyes as we listen to this poem by Micheál O'Sullivan called Chinook Sanctuary, and I hope that you'll be able to just breathe and feel the essence of this sanctuary poem. Having descended into silence, I face a wooden structure. The sanctuary breathes before me, so I enter with rain on my skin. Completely empty, it welcomes the emptiness in me, called to prayer, the easy prayer of simple breathing. This is how a church should be. The joining of warm wood together, making walls invisible, calling us to join in, not leave behind the life outside the door. A church vulnerable to fire and water, a prayer vessel floating in the forest. Mesmerized by amber tree lines ringing around me, I knew courageous prayers are said in places like this, with wood, listening. I knew utter joy sweeps through places like this, a shelter, not an escape. Unfettered by damp rock and twisted metal, hidden behind stained glass. Lead-lined, but a living, breathing, wild church for wild prayers. And though the air is still, a silent gale rose through this singing space, this silent cathedral among the moss. My skin thirsts again for rain, my soul a falling acorn, a hazelnut floating. Grant yourself refuge here. Grasp these sacred seconds and call your soul your own. May it be so.
Good morning. I'm Cindy Schleier, representing Caring Circle. As we make space for the joys and concerns of this congregation, I invite you to join in our communion of names. And if you're watching online, please add the names of those who are on your heart this morning to the chat, whether they are there due to concern or joys. If you want to contribute to our sharing of joys and concerns, you can send an email to joysandconcerns@orlandouu.org during the week so that it may be shared during worship on Sundays. Additionally, if you are attending in person, you can always fill out a card at the registration table and hand it to an usher before the start of the service. First, a big thank you to the worship team and lay leaders for the inspirational and creative Summer 1U services. They have given endless hours of time, thought, and research to share a variety of themes which produce joy, thoughts, challenges, and inspiration. Thank you, Libby, for remembering those people and for all of us. Last week it was shared that Winnie Tyler, who had been a long-term member of this congregation but had left also a number of years ago, had died. The information about her memorial service, which will be September 12th, is at Gabby's table in Gore Hall.
We invite you into the practice of generosity for the many ministries of the First Unitarian Church of Orlando to thrive. You can make an offering online to support the many ministries of this congregation. Simply go to orlandouu.org and click the donate button in the upper right-hand corner, or send a text or mail a check. You may also support this month's Share the Plate partner, the Health Care Center to the Homeless, by finding a link to their organization in our weekly newsletter and reading about their mission.
This morning's offertory is Caro mio ben, Thou All My Bliss, a 17th century Italian art song. Since it is question day, I thought I would leave you with the question, why did Aubrey choose a 17th century Italian art song for church?
We seem to be looking through some questions, and we'll be starting shortly. All right, like now.
Okay, so everybody understands the format. We have a number of questions here. A few of them are specifically to Reverend Margalie. The rest is kind of everyone. So just to start us off, what did the young girl say to the man with a mustache? I must ask you some questions, and I'm not shaving them for later. I'll just start with one of the ones for you, Reverend Margalie. What surprised you most about your first year of ministry at 1U? This might be about the congregation, ministry in general, or yourself.
What surprised me? I do love surprises. Let me see. What surprised me? Well, you know, all right, this will be light, so it's not about ministry. I grew up in Florida, grew up in Miami, and I still don't like the heat, I'll tell you that. But it used to really piss me off as a kid, that curtain of heat. When I say piss off, it used to really piss me off. It used to really upset me. I'm surprised. I'm quite surprised at how, yes, I still don't like it. Doesn't piss me off. I'm not as upset with it when I walk out and feel that wall of heat. It doesn't, I'm really surprised. I don't know, maybe I'm getting older. I mean, you all have seen me here. I'm one to sweat. But I'm like, that's just what happened. So that's a big surprise. So if you were looking for a deep answer, but that was, that was what surprised me the most.
Do you have, for each of you, do you have a daily or weekly ritual to center yourself?
My usual daily practices are to start the day with a set of stretches that I have and to do morning pages, which is free writing for 3 pages. And then I do Tai Chi before bedtime.
Well, I have 2 small children. So my day looks a little different than Reverend Kathy's, I'd say. But 2 things that we do as a family that I find very grounding are that we say a blessing before we eat together. Most often that's dinner, but any meal where it occurs to us to do so. And then the other thing is that we sing together at night. And we've been doing that since my 4-year-old was a baby, and usually we choose one song for each person in our family, including the 7-month-old baby, who we just have to get a sense of what he might be feeling for. But if there are other people in the house at bedtime, then they get to have a choice too. And I think it's very calming for the children, but for me, I find that it's very grounding to spend that time in song together.
I started during the year, this past year, I hadn't been very consistent in my practices, but while I was away, I got to do that a lot. One of the things that, one of my favorite is Lectio Divina in the morning. So that is my favorite of my practices, and that's where, for those who may not be aware, if you attend Vespers on Wednesday nights, every second and fourth Wednesday, you know what I'm talking about. But Lectio Divina briefly usually consists of reading a text 3 times and with reflection time in between. So that's my favorite. But something else that I've been doing, I'm trying to make it into a spiritual practice, but it's, an inversion table. So I've been getting on the inversion table and kind of in the mornings, sometimes at night, for about 10 minutes. And that feels really good. And I have to be careful what I say here, that I'm not lying, because my niece is here. My niece is visiting me from out of town, and she knows what I do and don't do.
Well, I'll put you on the spot again. This is another one just for you. How old were you when you left Haiti, and what are your memories?
I'm thinking of the memory question. Oh, wow, what are my memories? I'm picturing my grandfather's backyard. I'm from a large family, so there are many. I have a lot of siblings. I'm playing in the backyard. I'm seeing the dogs barking. Something we did a lot at night is that the adults, we would all be in the living room, and then the adults would tell us stories. And with telling stories in the Haitian tradition, when somebody wants to tell a story, they say creek. And then if people want to hear a story, they say crack. And basically, if you're a good storyteller, if you say creek, people are very excited to say crack. But if you're not a good storyteller, you know, people are not that excited to hear your story. So yeah, I think those seem to be the most prevalent memories. I feel like, so we moved to the States for good. There were other times when we came, but we moved to the States for good when I was 10. So, and that was in Miami. Miami, yeah.
What is the one decision you wish you didn't make, or you hadn't made, I guess?
Can we go back to football? I think that's a really hard question because you almost have to picture another reality to imagine the answer to that. There are some decisions that I've made that felt terrible at the time, but then what happens as a result of them is what my life has been, and I don't regret that. So that's sort of a non-answer, but I don't think I have a good example.
Yeah, I have the same sort of feeling. There are decisions that I wouldn't make again, and I think were probably ill-advised, but they resulted in things, like my first marriage resulted in my 2 daughters, who I love very much, so I, can't really say I regret that. And then there are some other things that were errors in judgment that we're just not going to discuss here.
Well, I figure we have a lot of questions. And I want to make room for them. We can come back to that if you want, but I figure we have a lot of questions, so go to the next one.
All right.
To any or each of you, give us a description, reminder of your professional relationships and how they intersect to provide ministry at 1U.
Shall I start with the absence question? Okay, so I'll start because we actually talked about this. So Margalie and I have, we actually talked during the search process, and my ministry right now has been a ministry of absence, which is to stay away while you went through your process and get to where you are now. Margalie and I have a covenant, and we have had coffee, and we're in conversation about when and if and how Charlie and I might return to some involvement in the congregation. This fall we're going to be traveling, so it won't be real soon, but we are in conversation about that. And I'll tell you another thing is, I gave myself a sabbatical. You may remember that I was supposed to go on a sabbatical a few years ago, and that got kiboshed. And so I was consulting, and I decided that I would take a break from that so we could travel. And so I said, as of July 1st, I'm not doing anything having to do with church. And then I got an email from Margalie that said, will you be in this service? And I said, I have two conflicting values. I'm not doing anything, and Margalie asked me to do something. And that I will do anything Margalie asks me to do is a higher value.
So my title here is that I'm an affiliated minister with this congregation. That means that I am a Unitarian Universalist minister whose primary ministry is outside of this congregation. So I serve as the program director of the Beloved Conversations program, which is a anti-racism, racial justice, spiritual transformation program at our Unitarian Universalist seminary in Chicago called Meadville Lombard Theological School. Obviously, I work virtually. And I also serve this congregation sort of on an as-needed basis. So I lead worship when I'm asked to, I teach when I'm asked to, I fill in for pastoral care or other services like weddings or funerals as I'm asked to. The other part of my relationship with this church is that I grew up in this congregation. So my family started attending here when I was really young and are still really active in this congregation. And so that's the other piece that's very important to me, is that this is the congregation of my childhood and my formation as a Unitarian Universalist. Do you want to answer this one? Do you want to answer this one?
I think my position with this congregation is clearer. I'm the settled minister. I am also very much of a collaborator. So when today's service, I think there definitely, whether you see these folks here on a regular basis, there will be times when I will be asking them, hey, can we do something together? And I think I have a really wonderful worship team that I work very closely with. So yeah, I think my position here is maybe a little clearer. So I think I've said enough.
Okay. Another one for you, Reverend Margalie. Give us your sense of 1U's reputation in the community. How are you being received in the interfaith arena?
So when I think of the larger UU community, I think some of you have heard the story. When I was entering search, I entered it backwards. I called Keith Crone with the UUA and said, so I'm kind of thinking about this. What would you say are the healthy congregations out there to go, if I was going into search? And he's like, oh yeah, Orlando by far. So that was the answer from, so we're talking larger UU world. And when I was researching my congregation, I called colleagues and different places, really, from all over the country. And whenever Orlando came up, it was like, oh my gosh, yes, yes. And the community here, I feel like Orlando has a really good reputation. I'm part of the Interfaith Council. We are trusted to be the people who show up, and I think, unfortunately with COVID, we haven't had as many opportunities to show up, but I think things are reopening and so on. We are the people who are very inclusive and welcoming. And I get invited to a lot of things, and it has nothing to do with me personally. I know it has to do with 1U's reputation. So 1U is really seen well, not just in the local community here, but in the larger UU community.
Okay.
Oh, yes. Give yourself a hand.
So this is a little more, quite a different topic, but you mentioned Keith Cron. So this question is related to an aging congregation. Reverend Keith Cron found our median age 61 in my day at leadership school. An aging church will die unless revitalized. That's the risk I see us facing now. Having a professional full-time RE director is great. Is it our expectation that this person will solve our problems? What words of experience and wisdom do you have for us?
Well, yeah, this person will solve our problems. What are we looking for a full-time person for? No, I mean, no one person can, that's why the work of the congregation is all of our work. It's not just the minister, it's not the DRE or the hired staff, it's not us, it's all of us, right? So all of that has to do with, yes, I do think having a full-time DRE or DRE period is extremely important for any congregation, and certainly one our size, we need one. And really, hopefully we'll have some news for you in that arena very soon. So we're working on that. At the same time, the plan is not to okay, now that you're here, the families are going to come and everything is going to be all better. I think continuing to earn the reputation that the community has, right, that we've earned in the community, continuing to earn that by showing up. People see us. I even remember last year when we were at the Pride Parade, how people were, I feel like I'm poof poof on the mic, where people would point to our van and go, oh my gosh, it's a church. So things like that, showing up for when there are marches and protests at City Hall. And the other thing is that's not really the only way to, for some people that's not your way of showing up, but there are ways to show up and maybe taking water to those who are protesting, making phone calls, engaging with other agencies in the community that's doing work that are aligned with our values and so on. So that's my word of wisdom, if it could be called so, is for us to continue to show up and really live up to our mission of being the example of liberal religion in Central Florida. I think, and that's really how we can be attractive and relevant to the world. And the other thing that's extremely important is whether they come or not, this is work we need to do. We need to do this work, whether they come or not. They will come, we hope, because we don't want to be a dying faith. But that's work that needs to be done, whether or not they come.
One of the things I've been doing for the last couple of years is some consulting and guest preaching. 61 is nothing. I got to tell you, for Florida congregations, if you look at the census information on the UUA website, this congregation is one of the top in Florida for having children. And so, but it's much harder to restart it once you lose them. So putting the effort into it now is really worthwhile. And the other thing I would say is every time, every committee you are on, quickly think of the committees that you are on. Every time you plan something, you need to ask yourself, how can children help? How can they be involved? And how can parents with children be involved? And preferably all together, right? Families have so little time, they need to be involved together. But every committee, I mean, I guess, well, you could have a teenager on the finance committee, but but there's lots of different ways that kids can be involved, and it's everyone's job to figure that how to do that.
You know, as you've grown up in this church, and now you're raising your children in this church, so I think I'd love to hear, especially what you're hoping for as we move into this new venture.
Yeah, I think I definitely resonate with what Reverend Margalie and Reverend Kathy have said, and I guess the piece that I would add is that when families come, because I think that they do already, and they will continue to, what are we doing here in the church? And I think that's part of what you're saying, to be a home, a religious home for people of all ages. And so I don't think it's just getting them here, but it's also once we're here, how are we engaged, seen, honored? I think that there's been some amazing work done with this renovation of making sure that there are changing stations in the bathrooms, hooks to hang a diaper bag on. And I think those little things really add up to say, we anticipate you will be here. We're trying to keep your needs in mind. And how can we continue to do that and be a place where you can tell us, hey, here's another thing I could use or need. The other thing I'll say is that I think that this intersects a little bit with the realm of racial and gender justice as well, because I think people my age, and particularly people younger than me, are really looking to be part of communities that are radically inclusive. And that doesn't just include age, but it also includes questions of race and sexuality and gender diversity. And so the more efforts that we can make internally to our own systems and our own institution to be welcoming, not just in our witness to the community, but here in our own space, the more young people will feel like this is a place for them.
So following a little bit on what you just said, how do you see the 8th principle or changes in the Article 2 Commission affecting our congregation or the UUA as a whole?
Well, I'll just say for people who are unfamiliar with what this question is even asking, that Unitarian Universalism affirms 7 principles, and that's been true for many years, and there is a question about shifting those principles in several different ways, one of which is adding an 8th principle that's focused on social justice, particularly racial justice, and the ways that our congregations are working towards being multicultural and radically inclusive. And so this congregation is considering the question of whether we want to adopt that 8th principle as a congregation, while our larger denomination is also asking that question about whether we will be doing that as a whole association. And so I think that that is really exciting, because the work that we do as a congregation to have conversations around what that means for us as a congregation engages us in the larger questions we need to be talking about anyway, around racial justice and how we are living our religious values in the world. And I think it's kind of the similar conversation around the Black Lives Matter banner. This is sort of like Black Lives Matter banner 2.0, right? It's like, okay, we can put up the banner, and that feels really good to us, but what does it mean to make that commitment? How will it manifest in other ways than just putting up the banner or affirming the 8th principle? And so those are some of the questions that I have as we have this conversation as a community, or what are the really tangible ways we see this shifting each of us personally, but also, and more importantly, the way that we are as a community.
I wanted to add our 8th principle team. We're not working in a vacuum is connected with other congregations that have adopted the eighth principle or considering adopting it. The eighth principle team has also been in communication with Paula Cole Jones, who is one of the originators of the of the thought and then the wording of it, to come here and do a workshop for us. So we are working here, but also tapping into what other congregations are doing and what there is to learn about that. And I'm sure that I've been aware, I'm sure that there are other things that the eighth principle team has worked on that I don't know at this point, so I can't share. But, you know, as Reverend Kirsten said, the plan is not for it to just be in words alone. We've done this thing, so whoa, we're great. But like, how does that change us? You know, so it's not just a change from the outside. How does that change our community? How does that change us individually? Yeah.
Over the years, Sunday service format has changed from the historic sandwich format with a sermon in the middle and garnished with readings and hymns on the sides. The amazing pandemic virtual shift brought more welcome changes for a diverse format. Will you share any plans or thoughts on non-traditional music and movement and their place in the worship service?
Movement, huh? Well, we've done a couple of meditations that have been movement, but I'm glad to hear you're interested in more of those, so definitely I will be looking to do more. Aubrey over there as music director and I have been in conversation as far as like really how, with the music, how to bring different music as well. So we're still in conversations about those, but definitely I have some different thoughts around just how to just make worship, the Sunday worship, even more engaging than it has been, even more involvement from the congregation itself, you know, like today with you asking the questions. But we're always looking for ways to make it more engaging with the music. And now hearing you want more embodied meditations, we'll be looking for more of that. So yes, and you know, I especially like this question in that you're telling us what you'd like to see as well. So, and that's very helpful. So, and then one thing I like to say about services, right? So, you may come to today's service, you may be sitting here going, what is this question, blah, blah, blah. That's not what I came here for. And somebody else is sitting here going, oh my gosh, they should do this every Sunday, right? So the thing is this though, but all of you need to be here because even you who's sitting here thinking, gosh, I could have been doing something better with my morning, you are making this experience a much better one for those who are really enjoying it, right? So all this to say different ways of doing services, different ways that speak to people, and you letting us know so that we can bring those into those services. But, you know, whether or not you see the title of a service or even what's in it, you're like, that's not going to be for me. But you being here will make it great for someone else. So whenever you can, show up for one another as a community, right? That's part of being in community. But thank you so much for letting us know what you like. So.
Okay. What feeds your soul?
I think one of the things that I have learned feeds my soul that I didn't really realize is mountains, and it's my one complaint with Florida. Mount Dora and Claremont notwithstanding. I grew up sort of equidistant from the ocean and the mountains and took them both for granted. They were both easily accessible. and I thought they both mattered to me. And I do like the ocean, and I love to go there. But there's this thing when I look out over hills and you can see multiple mountains and stuff, I just go, I went to a writing workshop up in North Carolina recently that was on top of a mountain. It was just, my whole body relaxes.
I would say for me, it's being with other people. So relationships, friendships, particularly ones where you've known people for a really long time, or even if you haven't, it's become deep quickly. And that's been very tough during the pandemic for me as a person who is a real extrovert, gets a lot of energy being in crowds, being with other people, spending time laughing, dancing, listening to music, eating together. And I think that one of my really core spiritual practices, this isn't the question, but it's related, is corporate worship. Like being in worship with other people feels so important to me. And I've loved the creativity and the expansiveness of what can happen with virtual worship over this course of this pandemic. And for me, it's not the same as being physically with other people. And so I'm very grateful that that is starting to happen again, and we're finding ways to make that safer for everyone. And I'm so glad that we still have the virtual option, because more days than not, I'm watching at my kitchen table than coming here. But the opportunity to be with other people just really energizes me like nothing else.
For me, trees, especially I call it dancing trees. You know, when the breeze is blowing through the trees and they're dancing, you know, you just kind of rock with them. I think, you know, sitting in a park, being surrounded by trees, I really like that. I just bought a home. So yes, I'm staying. I bought a home. And the one thing well, two things I don't like about it. It's a huge yard. Who needs a huge yard? Not me. But there are no trees. And then I'm like, and I was talking with my niece about how I'm going to plant trees all around the backyard. You know, like, it's just looking at a tree dancing, it's just kind of swaying back and forth. And I'll automatically start swaying with it, and it really calms me down. So yeah, that definitely does it for me.
Well, I'm just take a liberty and add on to that, because I'm wearing the ring I always wear, designed actually by the daughter of a member of the congregation. And it's a tree leaning over, and it sort of relates to when the wind blows, the grasses bend, and learning to be flexible. Okay, here's the last one, because we're at time. So I happened to just finish reading a book called True Biz. And it's an amazing education about the deaf community, but there's a question in there that they pose. What would a world look like if everyone was deaf and the hearing people who weren't deaf had to accommodate to this world? So my question is, what if everyone was a Unitarian Universalist? How would others accommodate to us? I'll take a whirl.
Hello? Okay. You know, sometimes I think it would be like in our Unitarian Universalist congregations, right? Because everybody's a persecuted minority in here, right? Like everybody's like, oh, well, there's all the people, I'm thinking of a congregation I served before here, and the humanists complained about the theists, and the theists I'm like, you're all minorities, get over it, you know? It's just,
So we have practice being not the boss of everything, right? You know, like we don't have to think our way is the only way. And so I like the idea that if everybody was Unitarian Universalist, that people would stop trying to impose their beliefs on other people, and that there would be an openness and a more curiosity. So those people that chose not to be curious, not to say, oh, you're different than me, and that's cool, tell me more about how that helps you get through the day, you know, they would be just sort of kind of like people go, okay, but you know, I don't really want to hang out with you, right? You know, like they would sort of self-isolate, I think, because they're not part of the way we do things, and that would be a choice they could make, but I think they would hopefully learn to see that curiosity and wonder get us a lot further.
You want the last word, I got it. Okay, well, I love speculative fiction, so I feel like this question is related to that. And I would add a caveat to that question, because I think that there's what is Unitarian Universalism at its core versus what is our current Unitarian Universalist culture. And I'm not sure that those are the same thing. I see Unitarian Universalism manifesting a particular way right now because of who are most Unitarian Universalists, right? White people, older people, people with financial privilege, people with educational privilege. But if you think about Unitarian, if everyone was Unitarian Universalist and all the types of diversity, I think that would just be incredible. Because I think what Kathy is saying, and that if we are holding love and relationship at the center, our covenant of how we agree to be together and we live towards that, I don't know, this question is blowing my mind a little bit, and I feel like I haven't even, my mind almost can't touch that. Have you ever read the book The Fifth Sacred Thing by Starhawk? Yeah. So this is kind of a throwback, I think, but I love books like that start to imagine what a different paradigm would be if we could rid ourselves of colonization and capitalism and heteropatriarchy and racism. Like what could become without that? Anyway, I think we should have like a whole time to talk about this. But I'm curious how Margalie is going to finish it.
You know, when you asked that question, the first thing that came to mind is every once in a while I realize I live in a Unitarian Universalist bubble. And it's a really good thing when I realize it, because it's usually I'll be watching something on TV or I'm in public and would hear people say something, and I was like, wow, well, that's rude, or that's this, that's that. So, you know, it feels like that aspiration, even though I'm not too crazy about that word, of that beloved community, right? That work to make space for people to be themselves, to be supported, to be encouraged to do the spiritual work while answering a call to social justice. It is, I do think from what Reverend Kirsten said, I think that would be a great sermon series, although that's not my sermon series this year. Maybe next year, or maybe we can come back and have discussions like this about it. But it really, I think that this question is really an important one, because I do think when we visualize what Unitarian Universalism is or can be, it is a really that beloved community that is inclusive, that is encouraging, that is in the struggle, inclusive, you know. So for people to make space for that, that would be the thing. I mean, can people make space for that, for all that love, for all that inclusivity? Can we make space for that? You know, are we making space for that? But yeah, so thank you for that question.
Oh. Wonderful. So
now,
So again, please rise in body or spirit. Joining us in singing our closing hymn, 1017, Building a New Way, and words will be on the screen behind us.
May whatever gatherings or activities we engage in this afternoon help restore us, our connections to one another, our sense of hope, beauty, and fun in the world, our deep knowing that we have to take care of ourselves and each other with love and joy if we are to soulfully survive the world's mayhem. Reverend Heather Ryan Starr. Beloveds, worship has ended, and now the service truly begins.
Please join me in saying the words for extinguishing our chalice, which are on the screen above us. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.